You're listening to Crimson Tide Transmission, the last frequency still breathing in Alabama. The air tonight smells like salt and rot, like a butcher's shop left open in a hurricane. If you're hearing this, you already know what's out there. The water isn't safe, the people aren't safe. But hold on, I'll tell you how it started. How the Gulf turned traitor. It began with the red tide. Not the usual algae, no, this was something sharper, engineered. A biotech firm out of Mobile called it Project Marigold. A cure for coastal erosion, they said. Bullshit. They pumped the water full of gene-spliced microbes, and 2 weeks later the blooms erupted. Crimson waves glowing under the moon like the ocean itself had slit its wrists. Swimmers came out wrong, not sick, hungry. Let me paint it for you. July 14th, Orange Beach. A family of 4 wades into the surf at sunset. The youngest, a girl in a polka dot swimsuit, splashes her brother, laughing. Then she screams. Not a scream of fear, a wet scream like her lungs were full of syrup. Her skin blistered, eyes ruptured into milky marbles. She bit her father's throat before he hit the sand. By dawn, the beach was a slaughterhouse. But this isn't just Alabama's curse. The Gulf currents carried the bloom. Corpus Christi, Galveston, Biloxi, all gone. Radio chatter says Mexico's coast is silent. No SOS, just feeding sounds. Now let's talk about the man who tried to stop it. The marine biologist. He worked for the same company that engineered the bloom. A lab rat with a conscience. When the first bodies washed ashore, he stole samples, hid in a fisheries outpost near Dauphin Island. His last email sent to every emergency inbox read, "It's in the blood. The cells rewrite the host. Salt water accelerates it. Fire is the only purge." Too late. By the time the National Guard rolled in, the roads were jammed with cars, trunks stuffed with severed limbs. Survivors? Oh, there are stories. A nurse in Mobile turned her ER into a fortress, used bone saws on the infected until they overran the generators. A group of frat boys rigged a shrimp boat with propane tanks, took out a horde wading into Perdido Bay. They died laughing, but the biologist, he's still out there. Or was. 3 days ago, a ham radio operator near Tensaw River caught a transmission. The bloom's not just in the water, it's airborne now. Spores. Don't breathe near the marshes. Then gunfire. Then silence. Look, I don't know if he's alive, but I know this. The wind's shifting north tonight, carrying that sweet metallic stench, and the things in the trees. They're not howling anymore. They're learning. We'll take a break, but keep your lights off. They see brightness like sharks smell blood. A trucker just north of Montgomery swerved his rig into a swarm of infected on I-65. Cabbie's last words on dash cam, "Y'all ain't taking my damn highway." The explosion melted asphalt. They're calling it the Bone Mile. But the worst story? A daycare in Foley. 20 kids. Teachers barricaded the doors, shoved cribs against the windows. The infected, they didn't break in. They climbed, crawled through the AC vents like roaches. The teachers fought, used scissors, fire extinguishers. One survivor, a 4-year-old girl, told rescuers, "Miss Karen kept singing even when her arm was gone." This is the truth. The bloom doesn't kill mercy, it feeds on it. It's 3 a.m. The biologist's lab went dark an hour ago. Satellites show thermal blooms spreading up the Alabama River. They're in the drinking water, the soil. Some of you are already infected. You feel it, don't you? That itch under your ribs, like roots growing through your veins. I'll say it plain. If you've drunk from a well, washed in a creek, or tasted a single raindrop in the past 48 hours, you've got hours left. Maybe less. But the biologist had a theory. He believed the bloom could be starved, that it needs calcium to replicate, bones. That's why the infected hunt so relentlessly, not just to kill, to harvest. So here's your choice. Sit in the dark, waiting for your own body to betray you. Or grab a weapon, lighter, anything that burns, and turn the Gulf Coast into a funeral pyre. They're at the station door. I've got a gallon of diesel and a Zippo. If you're still alive tomorrow, listen for me. The following account contains graphic descriptions of mass casualty events. If you are with children, turn this off. If you are alone, listen closely. The storm is coming, and it's bringing the dead with it. You're still here. Good. That means the things outside haven't found your hiding spot yet, or maybe they're saving you for later. Let's cut the preamble. I'll tell you what happened after the bloom went airborne, how the Gulf rose up and chose its victims. 3 days ago, Hurricane Delilah spun into the Gulf, Category 5. The Weather Channel called it the storm of the century. They didn't know the half of it. Delilah's eye wall sucked up infected seawater, vomited it back down as toxic rain. People melted where they stood, skin sloughing off like wet paper, and the ones who didn't dissolve, they twitched and changed. The biologist knew it was coming. His last broadcast warned the National Guard to napalm the coast. They hesitated. Politicians squawked about tourism season. By the time the bombers took off, Delilah's winds sheared their wings off. One pilot ejected, parachuted straight into a swarm of infected on Pensacola Beach. His helmet cam live-streamed the feed. They didn't eat him. They drowned him, held him under a tide pool until his lungs burst. Then they fused. Arms tangled like mangrove roots, bodies clumping into a screaming wall of flesh. The military calls it a hive. We call it hell. But let's talk about the biologist. He wasn't hiding, he was hunting. Stole a Coast Guard cutter, armed it with enough ammonium nitrate to crack a levee. His plan? Blow the bloom at its source, a research lab submerged 200 feet off Fort Morgan. But the water... God, the water fought back. Survivors on nearby rigs say they saw the cutter's lights cut through the storm. Then something breached. Not a whale, not a shark. A thing made of a dozen infected welded together by tendrils of red algae. It rammed the boat. The biologist's crew opened fire, but the bloom had already infested the hull. One deckhand, barely 19, radioed, "It's in the pipes! It's in the goddamn..." The transmission ended with wet crunching. The biologist made it to the lab. We know this because he activated the facility's emergency beacon, but the lab wasn't abandoned. Security footage shows infected scientists, still in their lab coats, clawing at containment tanks. The bloom had reanimated them but kept their intelligence, their cruelty. They set traps, flooded corridors, locked the biologist in a chamber with a vent pumping spore-laced air. But he's a stubborn son of a bitch. Ripped out the vent's filter, stuffed it with C4 from his vest, blew a hole straight into the central tank, the original bloom culture. He was coughing blood by then, spores germinating in his lungs. His final journal entry, scrawled in a waterlogged notebook, reads, "If it wants a host, I'll give it one." He dove into the tank. Let the bloom consume him. Then he detonated the charges. The explosion lit up the Gulf like a second sun, burned the hive to ash. But the cost? The biologist's body was never found. And the bloom? It didn't die. It adapted. Messages are flooding in. Let me share a few. From a rooftop in Gulf Shores. They're climbing the walls. They're using tools. Took a crowbar to the fire escape. from a school bus stranded on Highway 59. Kids are turning. Mrs. Higgins shot the driver. We're out of gas, please. And this voicemail from a woman sheltering in a Waffle House freezer. She's whispering, they're pretending to be normal, knocking on the door, begging for help, but their eyes are all wrong. Oh God, they're singing happy birthday. But the worst? The storms. Delilah's remnants split into twisters, each one a spinning artery of bloom-infected rain. One tore through a Red Cross shelter in Daphne, 300 souls inside. Rescuers found the walls painted with bile and teeth, and a message written in blood. We are the tide. You need to understand, this isn't random. The bloom is alive. It thinks. It strategizes. Last night, it cut the power to every hospital from Mobile to Montgomery. Backup generators? Sabotaged. Infected nurses, doctors, slithered through vents, chewed through wires. ICU patients were dragged into the streets, fed to hives. And the water, God. A group of survivalists in Bay Minette thought they'd outsmarted it. Dug a well 300 feet deep. Drank nothing but bottled Dasani. But the bloom was in the dust. Sweat activated it. They turned on each other, ripped their leader apart with bare hands. His last words? Tastes like copper. Here's the kicker. The biologist's sacrifice bought us 48 hours. The blast's heat sterilized the Gulf. But Delilah's rains flooded the rivers, and the bloom is thick in the mud. You step in a puddle, you're dead. You wipe your brow, you're dead. You cry, you're dead. But there's a rumor. A Coast Guard chopper spotted a man on a sandbar near the blast site. No gear, no mask, just standing there, staring at the water. When the rotors dipped lower, he turned. His eyes were black, not infected black, empty. Then he walked into the waves, didn't drown, just vanished. Was it him? The biologist? Or something wearing his skin? They're here. At the station. I can hear them, scraping metal, gurgling that awful wet hymn. They've been out there for hours, testing the locks, learning. But I've got a surprise for them. The studio's rigged with enough fireworks to light up Mardi Gras. Stole them from a warehouse in Spanish Fort. If they get in, I'll turn this place into a sparkler. Before I go, listen. The biologist left a final message. Encrypted in the emergency beacon's pulse. Translated, it reads, the bloom is a network. Cut the head, the body starves. The hives are the head. Burn them. Burn everything. So do it. Torch your landmarks, your churches, your childhood homes. Salt the earth. And if you see a man with black eyes walking out of the Gulf, run. They're building. That's what you don't understand. The infected aren't just hunting, they're architects. The hive isn't a mob, it's a goddamn organism, and its first cathedral is rising over what's left of Mobile. Let me drag you into the nightmare. 2 days ago, the hive seized the RSA tower. 35 stories of glass and steel. They're modifying it. Fleshing the walls with pulsing red biomass. Bones as support beams. Skin stretched over windows like stained glass. And at the top, a nest, a queen, a brain. Survivors in drone footage say it's a tumor the size of a school bus, throbbing, veined with black algae. It broadcasts, not words, a frequency. Makes your teeth vibrate, your thoughts curdle. The military hit it with airstrikes at dawn. Didn't matter. The hive spat missiles back. How? They'd grafted SAM launchers to their biomass, human hands still clutching the triggers. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about you. The bloom's in the air now. Spores so small they slip through gas mask filters. You breathe, you belong to the tide, and the changes aren't slow anymore. A farmer near Atmore watched his wife inhale a single spore. Within minutes, her spine erupted through her skin, barbed like a rat tail. She used it to spear their dog, then him. Survival stories? Oh, they're grimmer now. A biker gang in Pritchard tried to outrun the spores on Harleys, made it 10 miles before the bloom in their sweat activated. They crashed into a hive patrol. The infected didn't kill them. They harnessed them, strapped the bikes to their backs, revved the engines, and used them as chainsaws. And the biologist? He's back. Or something is. A fisherwoman near Dog River swears she saw him walking the shallows at low tide. No gear, no wounds, just glowing. Blue light under his skin, like bioluminescent jellyfish. He didn't speak. He hummed. And where he stepped, the red tide retreated. But when she tried to follow, the water attacked, sent a wave of teeth and rot to drown her skiff. Was it him? Or the bloom mocking him? Messages. From a nurse trapped in the mobile infirmary parking garage. They're using IV poles as spears. They've got our charts. They're calling our names. From a teen in a storm drain near Spanish Fort. My buddy Jake turned. He ain't trying to eat me. He's just gardening, stacking rocks, building something. And this voicemail from a National Guard lieutenant barricaded in a Bass Pro Shop. We're out of ammo. They're taping knives to alligators. Send fire. Send anything. But the worst is from a ham radio operator in Mississippi. She intercepted a hive transmission. A voice stitched together from dozens of screams repeating, "Bring us the tower! Bring us the light!" What light? The biologist's glow? The explosion in the Gulf? Or something worse? The hive spreading inland, using rivers as highways. They've built barges from corpses lashed with seaweed. Sailed up the Alabama River, sacking towns. Claiborne? Gone. Selma? The Edmund Pettus Bridge is now a gallows. Infected swing from ropes, not dead, waving, beckoning, and the storms won't stop. Yesterday, a twister touched down in Thomasville, sucked up a hive, turned it into a blender of teeth and claws. When it dissipated, the debris field had bite marks. But here's the twist. The bloom's evolving too fast. It's running out of prey, so it's recycling, digging up graves, nursing homes, morgues. In Robertsdale, a funeral home director fought off infected pallbearers with an embalming hose. Bought time for 6 mourners to escape. His last stand? Pumping formaldehyde into his own veins. When the hive bit him, they melted. Take notes, survivors. The old tricks still work, just meaner. The hive's at the door, not just clawing, knocking. They've learned manners, but I've learned worse. The studio's wired to blow. I've got a school bus battery rigged to a propane tank. If my voice cuts out, you'll know why. Final intel. The biologist was spotted again, walking through the ruins of Coden. Survivors say he was heading for the hive's tower. And the hive? They're terrified of him. Set fire to their own biomass to keep him back. But here's the kicker. He's not alone. There's a child with him. A little girl in a polka dot swimsuit. The first victim. She's alive. Or alive enough. Is he saving her? Using her? Or is she the key to burning this all down? I guess we'll find out. This is not a broadcast. This is a reckoning. If you're hearing this, the war is already lost. But stories outlast flesh. So listen. Remember? And if you survive, burn. They're in the walls, in the air. The hive's frequency hums in my fillings. But I stole a transmitter from the wreckage. patched it into a car battery. So here's the truth, straight from hell's gullet. The tower fell. The biologist won, or lost. Depends on who's left to care. Let's start with the girl, the one in the polka dot swimsuit, the first victim. The hive wanted her, not to kill, to worship. Survivors near the RSA tower saw her walking hand in hand with the biologist through a field of corpses. His eyes were black holes. Hers, pure red, not infected. A light, like coals. She led him to the tower's base, where the hive's biomass pulsed like a heart. And then, she sang. The hive shrieked. The tower shuddered. Flesh peeled from bone as the biomass recoiled. The biologist didn't hesitate. He plunged his hands into the tumor at the tower's core. His skin split, blue light erupting like a star. The girl kept singing. And the tower? It imploded, sucked inward like a black hole. The biologist, the girl, the hive's brain, all crushed into a singularity of rot and radiation. The blast wave flattened downtown Mobile, but the bloom, it screamed. Messages. From the end, a firefighter in Tillman's Corner. The hive's falling apart. They're just rotting, but the spores, they're alive. They're running. A priest in Saraland. The rain's clear. The rivers are still red. What do we do? What do we do? And this, a child's voice, echoing through a gutted Walmart PA system. Mommy, the water's talking again. It says thank you. But the biologist's last act wasn't clean. The bloom didn't die. It fled. Retreated into the Gulf, down to the Marianas Trench. Satellites show a red mass coiling in the deep, growing, plotting. And the girl? They found her swimsuit in the rubble. No body, no blood, just a single note, folded inside. It's not over. He's with the tide now. The survivors are monsters now. We've all got the bloom in us. A little whisper in the marrow, but we're fighting. A militia in Bayou La Batre brewed Molotovs from shrimp boat fuel. Lit the marshes on fire. The flames turned blue where they touched the bloom. A high school chemistry teacher in Satsuma turned her lab into a distillery. Boils the spores out of rainwater. Calls it Tidebreaker. Tastes like gasoline and hope. And me? I'm sitting in what's left of the studio. Walls burned down, mic half melted. But I've got a new weapon. The hive's frequency. The one that makes your teeth itch. I reversed it. Play it loud enough and the bloom vomits itself out of your veins. Tested it on myself. Hurts like a motherfucker. But I'm here. They're coming back. The things the tide left behind. Fishermen drag up corpses from the deep. Old corpses. Civil War soldiers. Choctaw ancestors. All puppeted by algae. And the biologist, he's a legend now. A saint. A demon. Last night, a shrimper off Dauphin Island saw a man walking on the waves, glowing blue. The bloom's red tide parted for him. When the shrimper aimed his rifle, the man turned, smiled, then dissolved into a cloud of fireflies. Delusional? Maybe. But this morning, every infected in the shrimper's village was dead. Melted. Here's how this ends. The bloom's still out there. The tide's still rising, but we've got the biologist's blueprint. Burn the hives, boil the water, salt the wounds. And if you see a little girl in a polka dot swimsuit, follow her. If you hear a hum in the static, listen. If you feel the bloom itching under your skin,